Welcome to the Heat versus the World podcast. And now, stand up and make some noise for your host, Joe Jacob.
What's up, Heat Nation? Welcome back to another episode of the Heat versus the World podcast. Like always, I'm your host, Joel Jacob, and you can follow me on Twitter at JoelKJacob_. Now, let's meet our correspondents for today. First, we got Anthony.
What's up, y'all? The Miami Heat are 5-0 since my last appearance. Y'all welcome.
And then right after that, we got George.
What's up, guys? We're still number one.
And then last but not least, Brian.
What's up?
All right, so let's start off today's episode by talking about the Heat adding on to their winning streak. As you guys know, they went on to beat the Pelicans and then took care of business against Brooklyn this past Saturday. These two wins helped improve the Heat's record to 37-20, while still being the best team in the Eastern Conference standings. With that being said, what are y'all's reactions to the Heat's ongoing success? Start us off, Anthony.
Well, they finally got their starting five back. I'm talking, obviously, Lowry, Duncan, Jimmy, PJ, and Bam. So it's nice to see that they've been clicking. And I know the advanced stats on those guys have been really, really good, too. So it's nice that they're finally healthy and everything. And to me, the thing that is most awesome, especially we saw in the New Orleans game, not as much in the game against Brooklyn, but Bam took 21 shots in that New Orleans game. He tied his career high, and he just took 21 shots again. It was a couple games before that. So it was nice to see Bam continue that aggressiveness, because I'm pretty sure we all agree when Bam was aggressive, that just elevates his team to a completely other tier, because he's a mismatch for 99% of the league. So it's so exciting to see him actually start to realize that nobody out there can guard him. So that's just kind of my biggest takeaway. And if he can keep that up, this team, oh man, even without that, they were scary, but that just makes them all the more dangerous.
Right. And you, Brian?
Yeah, they've continued to play well. I mean, they've played well all season. They're the number one team in the East for a reason. We know how good they are, right? I think it's just at this point, I'm kind of not even really thinking about like regular season wins. Like everything that they do from now on is going to be, kind of like criticized or scrutinized with the playoffs in mind. I think the last game, the only really concerning thing was that they blew a 21-point lead, but you got to give credit where credit is due to Kyrie Irving. Like, it doesn't matter how bad of a team you're playing. If you have a guy that good, a big lead can go in a quarter if he's just going to binge offensively. So, but in the playoffs, when you're also seeing Kevin Durant, that's a problem. But outside of that, man, I'm happy. The team is rolling, doing what we kind of expect them to do.
Right. And how about you, George?
Yeah, look, we can't get much happier than a 5-0 win streak right now. Everyone's playing to the most of their abilities. Having Lowry back has just been an absolute, just a godsend for us, because you can see what he does for us on both sides of the floor. Just passing out of his mind. Just his playmaking for us was the missing piece for this team. And you can see that. And also, you just got to give credit to Bam, because Bam finally realized he can play the game of basketball, and he's actually, a decent player at that. He's plus 47 from his last two games. And that's incredible. So give him the ball. It's working. When he's on the floor, we're a better team. I think that the fact that we blew the lead was just more due to the fact that Bam wasn't on the floor. When Spoelstra took him out, we just looked considerably worse. And we can't let that happen, but we're going to have to find a way to work around when he's not on the floor, when he can't play those heavy minutes for whatever reason. But, besides that, we're all happy.
Right. And, to talk about Bam Adebayo real quick, there was an article that Wes Goldberg put out, which, caught my eye for a quick second, because so basically before this win streak started, you had the Celtics loss not too long ago where the Heat lost by 30. And, according to what Wes wrote in this article, Bam took this personal. You know, he didn't like that he only took 11 shots in almost 32 minutes he played, which according to the article was just as many shots as Caleb Martin took. You know, with Bam being the one and only star available for the Heat in this game, you know, he felt a lot of guilt and felt a lot of pressure that, you know, he should be going out there and taking more shots and being more aggressive. You know, and then I want to read this specific line from the article that Wes wrote. It says, as the team set off for a game in Toronto, the next night Adebayo told coaches and teammates, I need to be aggressive, not just for me, but for the whole team. And I mean, shoot, that's exactly what Bam has been doing so far. You know, although Miami didn't win, he played great against Toronto, and he's played phenomenal these past 5 games that we've won so far. So overall, it's just very encouraging to see him continue to be aggressive. And I know for us as Heat fans, you just want to see him continue to get better and to be more aggressive like this. This just adds on. You know, this is more fuel to the flame. So, you know, that's one major thing. And for this next topic now, I do want to focus on this past trade deadline for the Heat, because aside from the KZ Okpala trade, no other move was really made from their end, keeping their roster the way how it is. Although the Heat chose to keep things the way they are, other teams in the NBA still went out to make some big trades of their own. So because of this, I have 2 questions to ask you guys. To start off, are you all fine with the Heat not making any trades? And second question, was there any trades from other teams in the league that stood out to you guys? Give us your thoughts, Brian.
I think I'm fine with the fact that they didn't make any trades. I mean, from the perspective of just like someone who likes entertainment and chaos, it kind of would have been cool if they made a big splash, but they didn't need to. Like, they're the best team in the East. They've been one of the best teams in the NBA. There was no big shakeups necessary. And I think that from the Heat perspective, you're probably saving your salaries, you know, your biggest asset in Tyler Hero, your draft picks for a trade in the offseason. You know, if a Donovan Mitchell or Bradley Beal or Brandon Ingram or whoever, maybe someone we don't even expect asks out. Though I do think that not getting a backup for PJ Tucker could come to bite them. I mean, we've got to consider that this guy is 36 going on 37. He plays hellacious defense, right? He's played the 5 in Houston, and he's only 6'4". Like, this dude is 6'4", banging with much bigger guys, and, you know, chasing guys in the like. It's a lot for a 36-year-old body to handle. And if he goes down, like, you can basically throw the season into the toilet. Like, this team is not going far without PJ Tucker. So getting somebody that can take that pressure off of him, maybe as the season winds down, you can rest him some days and kind of plug in a guy. And I think that Spo's answer to that is largely going to be playing 2 bigs to keep PJ Tucker off the floor. But that's my only concern. It really is. Outside, in terms of trades that surprised me, nothing really. I mean, we all kind of knew about the James Harden stuff a little bit. So yeah, I mean, the only big thing about the trade deadline I felt was that a lot of teams in the East got better and the Heat didn't, and I think that's because, you know, they're waiting on Victor Oladipo to come back. But the Heat are still in a really good position, so we're good.
Right, and you, Anthony?
Man, everybody's talking about, you know, James Harden and Ben Simmons and this and that. To me, the Miami Heat won the NBA trade deadline because they got rid of KZ Okpala. I'm sorry, KZ, if you listening, bro. I like you. The team seems to like you. You seem like an awesome dude. But at moments, it looked like you never touched a basketball in your life, which is fine. You know, he was going to be a developmental project, and COVID got in the way of that a ton. You know, there was no training camp and stuff and G League and whatnot. So it's not all his fault. Unfortunately, the timing was just never right for the Heat. And suffice to say, I'm kind of happy off this team because really everybody was playing except him. And I know he had a wrist injury and stuff like that, but truthfully, even when he was healthy, you were getting minutes from your 41-year-old Udonis Haslem over him. So that kind of tells you what Spo thinks of KZ Okpala. So just the fact that they got rid of him, got a 2nd-round pick in return, which net overall, they still lost 2nd-round picks because they traded 3 to get him. But the fact they got a 2nd-round pick in return, unlocked another 1st-round pick because, you know, they removed protections and whatnot. I was certainly very happy with that trade. Even going into the deadline, that's kind of what I expected. I figured they would move KZ for roster spot purposes. So now they can give Caleb Martin a standard deal and still have room in the buyout market. So that's kind of what they did. And I'm certainly happy about it. I know we're going to get into later. So at least now they have the opportunity to bring someone into the team. As far as other teams, kind of like Brian was saying, it's really what we expected. I wasn't surprised when the Harden deal went through. I think it makes both those teams better, but there's still a lot of factors and variables that we have to see before I'd really be scared about either one of those teams. But I suppose both teams got better. They both kind of got something that they needed. And other than that, something that surprised me was the Goron trade. I know a lot of Heat fans that wanted Goron to come back, wanted him to get traded so he can get bought out. But the trade itself just kind of surprised me because the Raptors traded a first-round pick and Goron to get Thaddeus Young. And the reason that surprised me is because a lot of people thought Thaddeus Young was also going to get bought out and he'd be, another potential good option for the Heat, but not anymore because the Raptors gave up some assets to get him. And they already have like a bunch of switchy fours and stuff. So it was a little weird that they pulled the trigger on that trade, but at least Goron was traded. So there's the potential he gets bought out and comes back. But that's kind of my thoughts on the deadline.
Right. And how about you, George?
Yeah, there weren't many trades that did surprise me. I think we did expect a lot from the Harden that the gravity of that trade really shook the league. But I was going to say as well, the Goron trade did surprise me because I thought honestly he was going to get traded to a place where he was going to contend with them. Basically, I didn't think he was actually going to get bought out. So sorry, we got what we wanted, but there's no real endpoint in sight with him. I don't know about the Goron returning to Miami. I think that's a real, that's a gray area. A lot of people think that he can be something for us on the bench. A lot of people think that he's future lies elsewhere, but we just don't know what's going to happen with him. I think with the buyer market as well, which is really important, is that I think the Heat will have a look into that as well. But there's not really any concrete guys that we should be going after. It's a pretty weak buyer market in my opinion. But look, the Heat did win the trade in the trade deadline in my eyes because we positioned ourselves for future moves and for something. If something was to go wrong and the team didn't perform up to standard, the Heat would be looking to make moves in the offseason, and getting that first overall pick, first round pick unprotected was a very, very important move for us because being able to move that is the only way to get stars these days. Teams are looking to offload their stars to then rebuild. So if the Heat found themselves in a situation where they wanted to move on from a player like Tyler Hero and Duncan, they can do that, make the salaries work in the offseason to get a player like Donovan Mitchell. If that would be the case, if he wanted out of Utah, I'm not saying that he does, but look, I think the team's in a good place right now. Spoelstra knows what he can do with his team, and we're proving it right now. We're the first team in the East. We can't really, you can't make that up. You can't fluke that. At the end of the day, there's big expectations on this team. They know that. PJ Tucker also does worry me with his age and the way he plays is so reckless. But there's going to be a way that Spoelstra he always finds a way. There's no, unless it's going to go to getting a player like Paul Millsap in the buyer market, but I doubt that's going to be the case. So, by minute distribution and building the lineups to really keep him out of harm's way of like 35, 37 minute games, when he's really important and counts is the next move. But we got Oladipo coming back. We got a lot of things to look forward to as a team. We're in a good place, and Spoelstra knows that as well.
Right. And Anthony, I know you have something you want to add.
Yeah. Well, first of all, that was well said, George. I know a lot of Heat Nation was freaking out because the one move they made seems very small, but adding that flexibility that they added is actually quite huge in the long run. So I hope Heat fans can start to acknowledge that. And I know they both, George and Brian both spoke on, adding some PJ Tucker insurance, which is super important, of course, because of how, because of his age and because of his experience. And I know the big name that we kind of kept hearing closer towards the deadline was PJ Washington. And I certainly like PJ Washington. It sounds like most of the Heat Nation does. I think he would have fit that backup role really well. if you could have did it for KZ and Markeith, it would have been a no-brainer. But obviously, after they traded KZ, the name you kind of heard, or the package you kind of heard, Omer and Markeith, I wasn't against it, but I wasn't, 100% on it like a lot of Heat Nation was. The reason why it makes sense is kind of what everybody said. You need PJ Tucker insurance. PJ Washington gives you that now. This is a win now team. Omer, of course, he's a good player, but he's probably still, 2 to 3 years away from reaching, his full potential, kind of, fixing a lot of the flaws that he has. But the way I looked at it is obviously Omer is the backup for Dedmon. So he's Dedmon's insurance. As far as PJ, if you had to, you can kind of do a little more flexibility. If something was to happen to him or you had to give him some rest, you could always slide Jimmy down to the floor and then maybe play Duncan and Strus next to each other, or slide Caleb down to the floor and add an extra guard in there. If you were to lose Dedmon, well, now all of a sudden your only really big you have is Bam. So that's why I think having at least another big in Omer, having that insurance is way more important than getting another 4, because you can kind of play around with the 4 and kind of put anybody you want there. Of course, nobody can do what PJ does as good as him, but, you could put Caleb at the 4 if you had to. You can't put Caleb at backup center if Dedmon was to get hurt. So that's why I'm glad they kept Omer, and I'm happy with the moves that he made.
Right. Overall, I said this before and I'll say it again, in past pods. This was probably one of the first trade deadlines in a while where I'd be satisfied regardless of what the Heat did. If the Heat were to make a trade, I'd be fine with it. If they didn't, I'd be cool with that too. I love this team, and I honestly think we can make some noise come playoff time. And I know you guys feel the same way. And, now that the trade deadline is officially over, the buyout market is now in full effect. So seeing the players who have been bought out so far, is there any names specifically that you think the Heat should go for? I know, George, you specifically said, that the market seems kind of weak right now, but is there any names for you at least that you think the Heat should probably think about?
Yeah, personally, I'm a fan of Paul Millsap. I know he's definitely he's up there in age. He's 37 now, but he does offer that big body that we would like as well. Another name is Derek Favors. Doesn't stretch the floor like Millsap can. So I think he's done a very appealing option for Pat. But the fact that he's only 30 and his contract is $10 million would be a little bit more of a sweetener in that deal. I don't know if OKC would commit to paying some of his wage, but I doubt that very much. And the other name is Goron. Look, we already talked about Goron. He's going to be very aggressively scouted by other teams. He's going to be he's in high demand. The Bulls are looking towards him. The Mavericks were looking into him. Milwaukee's looking into him. He's a high commodity for this weak buyout market. But I wouldn't mind getting Goron back only for the nostalgic purpose and to have him there. But if we're looking from a more realistic point of view, I'm looking more towards a Paul Millsap who can stretch the floor as a backup. He's only going to be playing 8 to 12 minutes a night. Well, if we're going to be realistic, he's not going to be looking to play outlandish minutes. If he can fit into the system, that's great, but he would give us that best chance at getting a backup to PJ because he does stretch the floor. He doesn't shoot the 3 as amazingly as we want from a player on our team. But what Spo does to players, it's just the system gets kicked in, and they perform at a really, really high level, which we've seen with a ton of players over the years. So if we're going to take a bet on anyone, it'd be probably Paul Millsap, in my opinion.
Right. And you, Anthony?
Yeah, well, I love the Paul Millsap thing. Obviously, we understand his age, but for the role that he would play, that's not too much of a problem. The biggest problem with Millsap, I'd say, is that if he was to get bought out, I honestly don't think he would come here. We know that he kind of pursued him in the past, and he had a chance to sign with us, but he chose Brooklyn instead. And I know his relationship with Brooklyn started to get sour because he wanted a bigger role. And again, I don't even think his role here would be that big. I don't know how big his role in Philly is going to be, but at least he'd be on a contender. So I'd love Millsap. He does what they need. I just don't think they'd have a chance to get him. I did pull up a list of the top 5 most wanted buyout guys just to get an idea. The first one they have is Gary Harris, who'd be interesting. He's a solid guard. He had a couple down years, but he's shooting 38% from 3 this year, which isn't too solid. They got another guard, Dennis Schroeder, who we all know is a good player, but he's obviously very similar to Gabe Vincent, and I think Spo would just have a little more trust in Gabe. The other guy they got is Robin Lopez. Obviously, there's not really need for him. And then they got a guy that I kind of wanted from the beginning of the season that he might get bought out. The thing that makes it hard is it would be so much money is John Wall. So I'm curious what you guys might think about a John Wall, because obviously he's still a really good player. Even then, it might be tough for him to get minutes here because you have to sit Gabe, who's been playing well all year. And we know Wall is kind of washed, but I've been interested in him. Before the season, I was interested in Kevin Love because obviously I didn't expect Cleveland to be as good as they are. But since they are performing so well, they're more of a buying team than a selling team. But John Wall interests me. And then this list also has Goron. I'd love Goron back, same as George, for nostalgic reasons. I don't think he'd play, but at the very least, you can bring back one of Jimmy's best friends and make him happy. So I certainly would be happy with Goron as well.
Right. So my opinion real quick with John Wall, like I've always wanted John Wall since the start of the season as well. But like I do feel like, because he's making so much money and he has the potential to make more, I do think that he probably won't do a buyout and just continue to get his cash. I mean, you can't blame him for being like that because at the end of the day, this is gonna be like his last major deal. So unfortunately, because a trade was never going to happen. I mean, because unless Miami was to be crazy enough to throw in Jimmy, Bam, or Lowry for a guy like John Wall, obviously they wouldn't. A trade would literally be impossible. You'd literally have to trade everyone from the roster side those three guys, if you'd want to get a guy like John Wall, because, that contract is humongous. But, those names were definitely interesting. And how about you, Brian?
Oh, my bad. So no one really interests me on the buyout market. I mean, I feel like we still have to wait to see. Maybe there's gonna be a couple other guys, but the Paul Millsap would be cool. He'd definitely be good. PJ Insurance, Derek Favors. Did he already get bought out, or is he? What's the status with Derek Favors?
From my understanding, he's going to be he's planning to be bought out.
All right, cool. Then yeah, I would be cool with Derek Favors. Kind of guys like that, like guys that can play the 4-5 as a backup to PJ. But outside of that, I don't really want another guard just because they're not going to get minutes. And you're already bringing back Victor Oladipo, so anybody at the 1 or the 2, or I guess any guard probably wouldn't play. And even if there was an injury, then that kind of just means that another one of our guards is going to play more. So it would be like really, really like if they were playing, something catastrophic would have had to happen. Maybe you could look for another wing, but even guys like Tyler, Duncan, Oladipo, I'm sure in some stretches can play the wing spot or can play up a little bit. Max, dude, there were stretches last season where he was playing the 4. Not that that's ideal, but yeah, I don't know. I don't think that this buyout market is super strong. No one in particular interests me. I guess Goron is the name that people are talking about, but I don't want Goron on this roster just because he's not going to play. And I feel like you already got rid of a dead roster spot in KZ. Like there's no reason, in my opinion, to add another one. Salute Goron for everything he did, but I'm not feeling bad for the man that had $19 million last season. Like, I ate a cup of noodles for dinner, bro. Like, no one's feeling bad for me, so I'm not feeling bad for Goron. He's good. Yeah, I don't really think that they need to make a big splash on the buyout market though. Like, their big addition is going to be Victor Oladipo, and that we're going to roll with that.
Right. And quick thing I want to bring up is that Shams actually just tweeted as this part is being recorded that the Heat are apparently signing Haywood Highsmith to another 10-day deal. Now, I was a little surprised when I saw this because at first I thought it was just one of those hardship deals that you sign someone after a player gets COVID. But since none of the Heat players are in protocols, according to these injury reports, apparently, I don't know, maybe this is a guy Miami wants to experiment with. I don't know if, George, you have a certain opinion about that, but I know you got something you want to add.
Yeah, sorry, I'm just being thrown off by just the image of Brian warming up a cup of noodles for dinner. That just stayed in my head. But what I wanted to say, I just wanted to clarify something. Paul Millsap hasn't been bought out yet. He did come over in the James Harden trade to Philly. The coach Doc Rivers he has commented on saying he might use him as an old head in the locker room, someone that is a veteran presence for them. I just highly doubt that he'll still be on the team by the time this time tomorrow. I feel like he will get bought out. I don't think there's a place for him there. But going back to the Goron thing, I just wanted to add, this team is extremely guard heavy. If you're looking like just from an outlook, Hero, Lowry, Oladipo when he comes back, Robertson, Caleb Martin can play the two or three, maybe even the four. Kyle Guy, Gabe Vincent. These are all and Max Strus. These are all players that take up that those roles, those minutes for him. If Goran was to come back, do I think he could contribute? Absolutely. But would he get the minutes? No. There'd be no way. There'd be no room for him in the rotation to fit him back in. So I'm a fan of the idea more than the actual execution of getting him on this team.
Right. Overall, and like I love Goron too. It's all just a matter of what the Heat want him back. And this just goes back to what the Heat want to do. I trust the front office. I'd love to have Goron back for the nostalgia, but that's basically it. You definitely don't want him on the floor that much, especially because this isn't really a guy that's known for his defense. So, overall, like I said, I love Goron, but we'll see what the Heat does, and we don't know what's going to happen, especially now with the Heat signing this guy to a 10-day deal. We'll just see what happens moving forward. Anyways, I don't want to talk about buyout market all day because now it's time for the Spotlight Heat Player of the Week. Heat fans, you know the drill. So the Heat have been on a 5-game winning streak, including these past 2 games that we mentioned earlier. And, the Heat didn't make a trade. Aside from Casey Alcala, this roster is still the same. We got all the pieces from what we started the season with. So with that being said, with the options still remaining the same and no new players joining in the category, who is your Spotlight Heat Player of the Week? You can start us off, Brian.
Bam Adebayo, because he's been more aggressive. He's great. If he played more games this season, he would 100% be an all-star. I have this delusional part of me that believes that if the Heat keep the number 1 seed, he could be all-NBA. There's no other center in it, unless we're considering Giannis at 5. I guess you consider Giannis anything from a 3 to a 5. But outside of Bam, there's no big in the NBA or in the East that's better than, or outside of Embiid rather, there's no big in the East that's better than Bam. That's my guy. We already know about the defense. That's been talked about to death because he's one of the best guys in the league at that. We know about the facilitating. We know about the scoring potential. We know about the athleticism, everything. There's a million parts of Bam's game that, you can point to and be like, that guy's amazing. But the ability to flip the switch and become a scorer and be a guy who can really lead you in that category, I think is something we've been asking of him, and he's been doing that as of late. So I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to see that he's starting to recognize that he is that star guy. He is a star player. He doesn't have to defer to anybody. Not to say that he should be 100% selfish all the time, but when it's your time to score, when it's your time to go, that makes you more dangerous. That makes other guys more dangerous. And to see him do that while still maintaining those other parts of his game is fantastic. So shout out Bam.
Mm-hmm. And you, George?
For me personally, there's a part of me that wants to pick Kyle Lowry because of the fact that the team has found success since he's been back. But I have to go with Bam too. Bam is just, when he's aggressive and he wants to win, and when he wants to play the way he wants to play, he is as scary as they come. When he's driving down the lane, there must be defenders that just get shook out of their boots for him. I can't even sugarcoat it. He's probably the best. He's the 3rd best big in the NBA as it stands right now. That's just my opinion, but he's just that good. And when he's that guy for us, we're that much of a better team. He shows it on the court, shows it on the stat sheet, and he's the Spotlight Player of the Week for me.
Right. And then you, Anthony?
Well, I got a couple of things I want to say. One, George, you sleeping on ramen noodles, bro. Those are actually pretty good. So, Brian, I'm with you. Two, Joel, you
fabulous.
Two, Joe, you got me so hyped. You over there talking about Shams just announced the Heat have signed, and I'm over here thinking Goron. I'm thinking this and that. Then you said Hayward Highsmith, which is cool. That probably has something to do. That probably has something to do with like when they convert Caleb, they'll have another two-way spot available. But you got me hyped. But I mean, that's cool. He played a few games here. He shot good, whatever. And for me, the spotlight player of the week is easily KZ Akpala. KZ, thank you for your sacrifice, bro. Have a nice life, man. I hope it works out for you. And I like what George said too. Bam, third best big in the league. You know, you could throw Joel and sloppy fat boy 1 and 2, but Bam number 3. I like that, man. Respect.
Right. And you know what? Y'all know I usually like to make a different choice for the Spotlight Heat Player of the Week, but I also feel like I got to go with Bam because I feel like since forever we've been asking him to be aggressive and all that. And to like see him, you know, take the amount of shots that he's taking these past few games, you know, to see him, you know, rise up and be that star player we know he's capable of being, you know, you just love it. So I just hope that he continues to get better. And I can't wait to see what happens for him throughout the rest of this season. So, you know, for me, I got to go with Bam. So with that being said, you know, to everyone watching this on the 5 Reasons Sports Network YouTube channel, we'd love to hear your Spotlight Heat Player of the Week. So go ahead and comment down below who do you think deserves this honor. So now that we got that out the way, it's time for the final topic of today's pod. And that's none other than this Heat and Mavericks game, as they'll be going head-to-head with none other than Luka Doncic. The Mavericks are currently 5th in the Western Conference, holding the record of 33-24. The last time these two teams faced each other, Jimmy, Bam, Kyle, and Tyler combined for 92 of the Heat's 125 points, giving them the win last November. Facts aside, what's everyone's expectations for the Heat heading into this upcoming game? Now, before I ask you guys, just keep in mind that Tyler will be out and Jimmy and Caleb are questionable for this game. So now that we got all that out the way, tell us your expectations, George.
All right, firstly, I just want to put this out there. I lived off noodles, okay? And the reason I have a car, because I had to eat them every damn day just so I could afford it. So,
you know the life, George. I respect it.
Respect.
Dude. All right, back to the game. The Mavericks came off a pretty disappointing loss the other day. When Luka has 45 and 15 and you still lose, especially to the Clippers, it's going to be, you know, a sad day. But there's a factor for and a factor against this game. The factor for is that we are still undefeated with 2 days of rest. Now, unless I'm very, very tired, and we've actually played yesterday, which we didn't. So of 2 days of rest, we're undefeated. So coming in, we'll be fresh, we'll be ready. I don't think that, you know, we should be afraid of, you know, this team. But the what's going against us, the fact that they've just come off a really, really bad loss. They're going to be hungry to win. They're going to be, you know, licking their chops at the moment. The fact that Jimmy might be out with Hero tomorrow. So it depends on who's available. I think if Jimmy plays, it's going to be a pretty good game to watch. If someone could guard Doncic and don't let him score 50 on us, then we should be okay. But it's going to be a really, really fun game, exciting. And it's going to be interesting to see who steps up in you know, with Hero being out and possibly Jimmy.
Right. And how about you, Anthony?
Well, I got good news for you, Heat Nation. I'm going to the game tomorrow, right? And all time, my record going to Heat games, I'm probably like 30-4. So I have a pretty good record. I'm 1-1 this year. I went to the Philly game where Joel whooped up on us last time. So that's good news. So as far as that, I'm confident the Heat will win. Obviously, Jimmy is questionable. Tyler is out. It's kind of hard to judge the Heat team because we've seen this year with their stars out, they've still performed really well and somebody always steps up. Kind of the thing that might help them the most is I did see Tim Hardaway Jr. is out for Dallas tomorrow, and he always kills Miami, especially in Miami with obviously his dad's jersey hanging up there and everything. So he's pretty much a Heat killer, good player. So not a scrub Heat killer or nothing, but he's out tomorrow. So that should help. And like George said, Luka did everything he could last game. They couldn't get it done. So if they're able to contain him, you know, they shouldn't have too much of an issue.
Right. And then what's your take, Brian?
I have no idea because Tyler and maybe Jimmy are out. I'm gonna say, as a Heat fan, I'm gonna say, they're gonna win by double figures, easy. Like, it's not even anything we should be worried about. Bam's gonna have a 40-point triple double. Kyle's gonna have a 50-point triple double. Max Hughes is gonna break the records for most threes in the game. Gabe Vincent's gonna look like the second coming of Fred VanVleet ×2. Like, I believe all these things are gonna happen in my heart. Haywood Highsmith is probably gonna play and turn into Michael Jordan on the court, But in reality, I don't know, man. I can't predict the future. If I could, if that was a real thing on Earth, there'd be a lot of implications about physics and the universe that kind of terrify me, because it would mean that the future is predetermined, which would mean that the future exists in some place that we could maybe reach, which is kind of crazy. The point I'm saying is, I don't know, probably gonna win, maybe. Yeah, that's my take.
I love the guts take, Brian. And George, I know you got something you want to add.
So I just want to put this out there. So Brian, you're saying that we're going to win 273 to 5 points. Is this what I'm hearing?
That's exactly what I'm saying, George. That is the literal exact score that we're going to win by.
I respect it. I respect it so highly. No, I just wanted to put this out there as well. If Caleb's back, Caleb is going for 50. Kyle Guy will actually be the one to break the record, not Max Strus. But I just want to put this out there about Tim Hardaway Jr. I actually always thought he'd be in a Heat jersey sooner or later. But he's going to be on the sidelines now, so that's even better for us. I was going to say that he is a Heat killer, but he's not playing. So we shouldn't have any problems if Jimmy plays. And I don't know. I'm pretty sure he feels pretty good after the Super Bowl trailer he was in the other day. So that he'll, he should be fine. He should be happy enough to go.
Right. So for me personally, I do think the Heat should win. Like you said, Brian, I expect everyone to have a very good game. I expect all the records to be broken, and we are playing against the Mavs of all teams. And y'all already know how us Heat fans feel about Mavericks fans. Well, not even Mavericks fans, but Mavs in general. So y'all know we got to show out and everything. So that's my prediction. I think the Heat will beat the Mavericks, and honestly, that's basically all there is to it, Like, it doesn't matter who has the good game and who wants to be like the way to drop like career numbers against them. As long as it's against the Mavericks, it's fine by me. So with that being said, I feel like we covered so much on today's episode. And, just to quickly hop in on that convo about the ramen noodles, I just got to say, Maruchan noodles are goated. So, I'm definitely on team ramen noodles. So now that we got that to quickly hop in for that. So anyways, thank you guys so much for listening to today's episode of the Heat vs. the World podcast. If y'all want to check out more content, go ahead and follow our Twitter and Instagram at HVTW Podcast, while checking out our website at hvtwpodcast.wordpress.com. Last but not least, make sure to check out Culture Shock, the Heat vs. the World's newest extension show, which is the Miami Heat pod, to feature an all-women cast, as they'll be dropping a new episode very soon. They're the first ever to do it. And once again, thanks for tuning in to today's episode of the Heat vs. the World podcast, and we'll see you guys soon with another episode. We out.
Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time with a brand new episode of the Heat vs. the World podcast.